Hello, my name is Mr. Fred Valenzuela, and I am the college algebra teacher at Dunellen High School. This is my first year at Dunellen. I've taught previously at Colonia High School, and I've taught at the Rahway High School. And prior to that, I'd been substituting around the Middlesex County area for 4 years. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, and going through the school system there, which isn't necessarily the best, is what inspired me to become a teacher in the first place. I like to think that maybe I could be the first math teacher that your child doesn't grow up to hate. But also, I want to be there to provide all the help that I can and to show that math isn't something that needs to be hated or feared. It's something that we can work through together. I graduated from Kane University, and I like to tell the students that I also went to Middlesex County College as well. It helps because I like to think that maybe instead of students just jumping straight into universities, it's good for them to consider alternatives. But I did also go to Middlesex County College, and I'm from a family of teachers because my mother is a second grade teacher and my dad teaches adult school. So you can imagine how busy it is every morning whenever we need to all go to our Zoom meetings and our Google meetings, and we're all teaching at the same time. Um, what is college algebra? College algebra kind of covers the same ground as algebra did. We cover very similar ground to algebra one and algebra two topics, but we try to relate it more to real world example. I mean, there's always going to be an inclusion of real world examples, but there's an emphasis on using algebra and functions for problem solving and a lot more modeling problems. Um, it provides a certain literacy for students moving forward into any further mathematics going into college or university that will definitely benefit them going forward. And also, it's the kind of mathematics that colleges and universities would expect you to understand at a very basic level. So it's not just necessarily a reintroduction or reintroducing into it, but it's more of a refining of those already existing algebra skills. About my classroom, since we are operating on Google Meet, I operate all of my most of my operations on Google Classroom. The college algebra students are fortunate to have an online textbook, which I feel like has been very beneficial. It provides the same online. It offers the online text. It offers a way where I'll be able to give them assessments, whether that's going to be homework or classwork, and I can cater problems to each student in case they need more practice in one particular skill than the other. Um, we use Google Classroom. We use Meet. Not Meet. We use Remind as well. I try to remind the students as much as I can to whatever homework we have. And if you would like a remind link, I'll talk about it at the end of the video. Since everything is on Google Classroom, um, so we do have these Google meetings, and what I like to do is I like to record. I like to record all my meetings, and I also have a virtual whiteboard, so to say, and I use this to write on a we have a there's a Google website where I can kind of draw all the problems and work on the examples. So while I'm working on that, I'm calling on students to answer while I write it out for them. It's as close to normal to a whiteboard to a real life classroom setting that we can ask for. Um, I post those virtual notes online along with the class videos online in case any of my students they miss a day or they just need help and they need to kind of like reteach themselves, go over the lessons all over again. So everything's already available, and they'll be able to go back on a catalog of previous lessons. Um, for grading in my classroom, what I do is I assign 50% towards any major assessments, which I consider tests, projects. Um, so that's going to be anything cumulative, maybe three, four, or five topics taught all at once, just all in one section. There's not going to be too many tests often, but they will count when I do give them. What I will give a lot more often are quizzes, which are worth 25% of the grade. And that's going to be kind of like on a weekly basis, as I like to try. And that covers maybe one or two topics or whenever I feel the need to assess students on their understanding. And classwork, homework has kind of been like combined together into the remaining 25%. Whatever classwork we do in class, I generally assign it as homework anyway. Um, and I generally assign it as homework anyway. And I kind of feel that just given how lean and I need to be during these during a remote learning setting. I just give them a couple days to work on it, and they submit their work on Google Classroom, whether it's a written response or they take a picture of their notebooks. In my classroom, just to cover some ground rules, obviously no cell phone usage is allowed. I try to encourage students not, to put away their cell phones whenever they're in class, or just whatever other distractions might seem obvious to me while I'm, eyeballing each of the students. Um, I also keep track of the students and their and like what websites they go on to. Honestly, a lot of students aren't on like YouTube while they're in class, so I'm glad that they are paying attention. But um, it's a good tool to have in case I need to report anything that they might be going on. And also, it's a little bit tough to kind of teach mathematics in an online setting, only because there is the prevalence of of these free math tools. That's really why the Go Guardian is there, just to make sure that no students are looking up answers to math. I try as a school-wide policy, we want to keep the cameras on and all mics muted. But I still encourage students to, whenever I call on them to speak out, or there might be times where I kind of have like, oh, I tell students, okay, whoever wants to speak up, just raise your hand so I know who's going to talk. And generally, it's going to be quiet while everyone's muted. But students are allowed to kind of call out when I call on them. And other than that, I just ask my students to be very respectful, to be very accommodating, especially in this online setting, while we're all still adjusting to this. Um, I believe that, despite all the circumstances that we're going through, I personally believe that math is too important of a life skill to pass up, to water down in any capacity. I personally strongly believe that that math is good for anyone because it teaches them how to be a problem solver. I like to say that mathematics is the science of problem solving, because if you can, and this translates to anything in real life, because if you can identify what your problem is, if you can identify what needs to be done for that problem, if you can create steps to solve it and then follow through on every one of those steps properly, then you'll always arrive at a solution. And you can take that analogy however you like in life. It applies towards every problem we do in mathematics, and I'm sure there's a lot of real life applications to that as well. Not everything I teach is going to be necessarily relevant to their lives, and I like to be honest with my students about that. But but the important takeaway here is that, despite the numbers and despite, like, the very specific topics, my students are going to walk out of my classroom as better problem solvers, as more critical thinkers. And that's what I feel like is still important, and why I still have this passion for teaching math, regardless of whether I'm in person or if I'm doing it through an online setting. I am at your students' disposal. I encourage students to message me whenever they need help with anything, because again, I want to be that math teacher that, this your child remembers, the one that helps them get through like whatever difficulties there are. And I want to definitely be there for your children as well. I want to be there for all of my students. And I generally wish great success for my students. And if they put in effort, or if they seek the little bit of help, whatever little help they can, then I will try to, push them further and push them closer and closer to success. Um, well, that's it about my class. If you need to know more about me, or if you have any questions for me, my Dunellen email is Valenzuela F. That's VALENZUELAF at DunellenSchools.org. Or email. You can shoot me an email and ask me for the remind code, so you can join the Remind classroom that I have set up, so you can take a look at, whatever announcements I make, whatever tests or quiz announcements I have, whatever homework I give to my students every day. If you like to follow that, or if you just want a direct line of communication with me that isn't necessarily email, just ask your student for the class for the Remind code, or shoot me an email, and that'll be our way of communication. And I look forward to having a very successful year with all of my students and all of your children. Please reach out to me if you have any concerns. Thank you.